Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Merry Christmas everybody. I hope you are all having a fantastic day. I figured in honor of the holiday, it would be appropriate to take a look at a Christmas LR for today's animation analysis video. And of course, with the GOAT Gohan Beast right around the corner, I figured it would be even more appropriate to take a look at a Gohan unit. So we're going to be taking a look at the Tech LR Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from a few Christmases ago. A very fan favorite unit. I know a lot of people really like this guy from the BoJack movie, and I am most certainly a fan of this guy too. As well, we also, because this unit is not a brand new unit, have the comparison. Of course, shout out to the boy Giad. He always uploads these. I'll leave a link to this video and of course his channel in the description below. But we'll actually be able to take a look at the animation next to the anime, which will be really cool. Now, I can't show you this just all in one go because I am terrified of the copyright system. So we will be watching this, and then if there's anything we feel like we need to clarify, then we'll hop over to this video. By the way, a couple things to keep in mind before we start. I've been trying to say this more and more before every single one of these videos, but I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional animator or anything like that. I just look at Dokkan animations all the time, and I'd like to think I have a good perspective on taking a look at these bad boys. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And now, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at this man. Of course, as per usual, we're going to watch it one time through first, and then we will go through it and dissect it. This guy's animations actually aren't too long. He literally just has the 2 super attacks and then the active skill, right? He doesn't really have too much to his name, right? Obviously, they show BoJack here beating him up because, you know, then it's like, oh, you know, Gohan's down for the count, right? But this active skill is still really good. I actually really enjoy this one to this day. I think the audio as well for Global and JP actually for this one is pretty good. I quite like this one. There is some really cool stuff in this essay as well. I will say there are a couple of things in this essay that I already will tell you that I'm not a fan of, and I haven't been a fan of them since this unit came out. So there's nothing really new on that front. But oh man, the ending, I mean, obviously this is the best part. Like, look at this, dude. Oh, such a sexy KO screen. It's so good, dude. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the boy. Oh, that's interesting. You can turn off YouTube's ambient mode that they have, that they added in recently, but it doesn't matter because we're in theater mode, and theater mode doesn't have it. All right, so first of all, we have this very nice shot from the back of Gohan looking at Beto. I really like this shot. I think the electricity and the ki, and as well the hair movement in this shot, right, is just so good. Oh my gosh, dude. The movement on the hair is just so perfect, and a little bit of that flutter of the clothes. I feel like a lot of the times I see lesser Dokkan animations lack this sort of detail, right? Like, this is the perfect amount of detail that you would want in a shot like this, right? You can even see the shading changing with it, which is very nice. However, we do go to immediately Gohan squatting down with a fade there, which I actually do want to see that compared to the original. How does that look? Okay, so I guess that's just a Dokkan original, because at least the boy Giad does not have anything for this section where he squats down. I definitely feel like they could have animated that a little bit better. I mean, it happens so fast, and the way that they kind of mask it is that they have the ki go down and sort of compress around Gohan, so you don't really notice him squatting down, because this like looks really weird. In full motion, it doesn't look as bad, obviously, but it is still a little bit jarring for sure. But with Gohan actually does disappear, that does look really good. And I think another thing that's really cool to note here too is the way that the ki works after that happens, right? When he disappears, it sort of shrinks into his body and then dissipates, right? Which is awesome, and a really nice little attention to detail. You can see there's even little bits of the ki still there on the screen, which is really cool. Of course, we have Gohan appear behind Beto and hit him with the back hit. I will say, it was always a little bit weird to me. Two things here. For one, he does just, like, immediately stand up. Like, this is a pretty yucky fade of an asset, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I'm definitely not really a fan of that, right? Obviously, you can see in the original source material, right? Does he even crouch? No, he's just standing there and then he hits him. It's a little bit weird because obviously with some of these attacks they kind of have to ad-lib it, because obviously in this scene, you know, this is taking from where he's attacking all the different enemies like this, right? So when you're using this in Dokkan, I guess I should say translating it to Dokkan, right? Not literally like the language, right? Like when you're translating the animation to the game, obviously you're only fighting one enemy, right? You're not fighting multiple enemies, at least not in the same way of the same context as the movie, right? So it makes sense why, even though it is multiple attacks, you know, it kind of ends up looking that way. But I do like that they kind of have him land, because I think that kind of makes more sense. I just wish it was animated a little bit better with him standing up. But this section I do really like, with him slamming his hand backwards. The only thing I wish is this was a lot more close up in the anime, and I wish that they would have stuck with that for this, right? Look how close. Rip Beto, by the way, holy cow. Look how close this shot is towards the screen compared to this one, right? Like, they're still both kind of far, right? It's not like they're the closest shots in the world where you're like right up in the character's face, but it is definitely still, you know, a lot closer in the original anime. Okay, so we do have a lot of fading assets here. I think the thing is for this, right, is that they're trying to figure out a good way to transition between scenes, because obviously here, Gohan's basically just like zooming around and hitting the enemies. But again, since he kind of has to stay in one spot, you end up with some of these little fades here like this, right? And they definitely could have animated him a little bit better, right, in terms of the movement. However, another thing to keep in mind with taking a look at these essays, let's see, when was this uploaded? Yeah, 2 years ago, right? This is the Christmas LR from 2 years ago. I'm actually technically, yeah, no, that would be 2 years ago, 2020. Interesting. So, obviously with that being said, because he is a little bit older, you have to keep in mind that the animations weren't as sophisticated, I guess would be a good word, as they are in the modern day. So, you know, we have to be a little bit forgiving and a little bit less critical when it comes to those sort of things. But I do still think it looks good, and especially in quick motion, it looks fine. I will say, the key is really cool throughout the whole of this section here, right? Like, obviously the key surrounds him correctly the entire time, and even when he's sort of moving quickly, they have the key, like, pointing in the right direction with the edges, which I think is really, really cool. Definitely a nice little touch for sure. Obviously, we have him fly above and then hit the enemy away. I will say, this hit doesn't really feel like it has a lot of impact. That is one thing that I can say about it. I don't think it's necessarily too bad of an animation. Even with the fade, with him turning around, I don't think it's too bad, because it kind of just looks like him turning quickly. But when he goes to fly away, right, this looks fine. That looks a little weird, and I think it's just because of the fact that he's going from this to this, and it's just like 2 frames, basically. That is definitely a little bit jarring for sure. I think the other thing that's interesting to note about that too is that obviously they're referencing this here, where this is not the same angle that Gohan's at, and he's obviously hitting away the enemy there. And again, besides that fact, right, 2 things. 1, literally 2, Super Saiyan 2, that is. Of course, in this shot, Gohan is in Super Saiyan 1, so it's really interesting that they obviously are kind of ad-libbing the animations a little bit to, you know, get like a longer animation by taking some of these scenes from when he was Super Saiyan 1. Obviously, since this is just a Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, and there's no transformation or anything like that, and there is no BoJack movie Super Saiyan 1 Gohan, that might not be true. There may be like some subunit, but there's definitely not a unit with like LR level animations or anything like that. Like maybe a world tournament unit or like a unfeatured unit might technically be Super Saiyan 1 BoJack movie. I don't even think so though. Maybe the SR, the Fizz one. Either way, the point of the matter is, right, is that of course, because this is just kind of representing the whole movie, it makes sense that they would take it from that. And again, it is also interesting too to me when Dokkan takes scenes like this and sort of makes an amalgamation of the scenes with the various different pieces of animation to make a more comprehensive super attack, right? Obviously, if the attack that they're originally kind of taking it from, because clearly, right, this is the part where he's like, you know, cutting them in half, right? It's interesting that they also kind of, you know, cut up into it other pieces to make a more complete attack. Speaking of which, though, we have this fantastic scene where Gohan flies down. I always thought this looked really, really good. And I love this shot here, too, because obviously you can see Gohan's arms are moving back, the hair is fluttering, and the legs actually move back like he's actually leaning forward into, you know, his flight, which is really, really sick. I like this shot a lot. Definitely one of my favorites in this guy's animations for sure. Very, very nice card art. And we transition into the punch here. With this animation, I actually think looks really good. I kind of wish that there wasn't as much of the fading here, but I understand that, again, you know, back then they weren't as prevalent with the rotoscoping, right? I think especially for a shot this close up, right? It would have been harder for them to get a shot where you actually kind of look like the camera's sort of wrapping around the character without this fade. However, I will say, excuse me, with this, it does kind of make it feel a little bit more climactic. Like, it's almost kind of like slow motion, even though I don't think that's what they're going for. But it does kind of make it feel that way. By the way, I definitely like that dust cloud at the end. And I think another really cool thing to note throughout this entire section is the individual sections themselves are really well animated, right? Like Gohan actually moving his arm here, the hair moving, you can see his head actually coming up a little bit. Then we have this side piece, right? The bang obviously fluttering a little bit, his head moving up. The fist, right? Obviously this fist coming forward, and even there the hair is still fluttering, which is nice because obviously, you know, you might not even have noticed if it wasn't, honestly. And then of course we cut to the fist with that mini impact frame, and of course this shot from behind Gohan with again the hair fluttering and whatnot. Looks very good. I really like this animation a lot. And I think the other interesting thing to note about this section too is that, again, this is actually when he's Super Saiyan 1. This is not an attack when he's Super Saiyan 2. And they kind of ad-lib at the end a little bit, right? Because obviously this is just, you know, when he punches Beto. But yeah, oh my God. Yikes. I'm really glad Dokkan did not try and mimic the source material on this shot, because, ooh! That's pretty bad. But anyway, I guess it does sort of look like that in the anime with the way that they kind of animate the punch, right? In terms of like it kind of changing between a couple of different positions. But I still feel like it's more fluid in the anime than it is in the Dokkan animation for sure. Okay, so moving on, we can skip Bojack's animation here unless we want to hear the whoa. This shot is so good, dude. Love the little bit of movement on the hair too. And what I really like about this scene too is that with the coloring, right, and the sort of light in the background, it really makes it feel like almost like a dream, right? Because we know that Goku is there, right? Because obviously he punches Bojack in the face, right? To stop him from, you know, hugging Gohan to death. And for Gohan, though, it almost kind of seems like a sort of like, not like he's in a trance. And it's not even really like he's in a dream, because obviously the next like line is "my father saved me," right? Like, so he's aware. But it's kind of cool because it's almost this like, how do I explain this? Like, kind of light and fluffy, like I guess kind of like a dream-like state, almost like you're lucid dreaming sort of thing. That's kind of this, I know it's like so much to kind of extract from a scene that's so simple, but that is really how this makes me feel. So they definitely do a good job on that for sure. And I think, funny enough, I actually like the coloring even better than in the original, right? Like, these heavy oranges are fine, but I actually really like the colors that Dokkan went with here, with a little bit of the lighter orange. I think that's nice for sure. And what's interesting too about this as well is you can see that they actually do include a bit of the fruit punch on Gohan, but they just make it black, right? Like, you can see that little line coming down from his mouth that would be the fruit punch there. And then it's a lot more clear here, right? That this is the fruit punch, but then on him it just kind of looks like dirt and debris. It's kind of unfortunate because obviously Dokkan tends to try and stay away from this sort of thing most of the time. Lately they have done a couple essays actually that have had some fruit punch chilling in it, but this is a good way to still do it while obviously trying to keep as true as possible to the original source material. But yeah, so we have this shot. Obviously, this then pops on the screen with a little bit of white, and we get Gohan looking up towards the sky, which this shot is also very nice, him thinking. I like this cut here, even though it may seem a little bit jarring. I think it's fine because obviously it's just him standing up. The way his hand moves, though, definitely a little strange, right? The way that it sort of like contorts, I think it doesn't help that like the top bits of his hand and then his fingers move. It just looks like really weird, right? If you really look at it. The scene is on the screen for so short that it's not even really that big of a deal. But it is just kind of a little weird because obviously like with this, it's such a quick scene of him just like lifting up his hand. But they focus on it so much in the Dokkan one that like his hand just looks very strange. It just looks very weird, right? However, this shot here, obviously, of the back of Gohan looking up towards the building, now standing. By the way, I have to say, too, I love the implication that they use of him standing up, because obviously this is only 3 scenes, right? Him looking up on his back, and then you can see, you know, him kind of bringing himself up with the arm, and then standing this way. It's a very good way for you to assume and interpret, oh, hey, he stood up, without actually showing you that, you know, he stood up. Which is pretty cool for sure. So yeah, this very nice shot from the back. Oh man, they nailed this, bro. They absolutely nailed this. So the key flaring up looks fantastic. I love this impact frame here because this is a fantastic way to transition between, you know, like the base form and then instantly he has Super Saiyan, and also the implication of this light then, you know, sort of coloring the sky and changing it from this gray to blue. Oh, so good, dude. So good. I think another thing that they really got down was the style and the sort of aesthetic. I know that's kind of a cringy word to use, but it is a good word to describe it, right? And the, like, coloring style of the BoJack movie, I think, is very well represented within these essays. The smoke cloud looks so good there. And obviously we have this close-up shot of Gohan screaming with his hair spiking up. The electricity coming out. I actually want to see... how does this look compared to the anime? I think, interesting, the anime kind of zooms in on his face a little bit more, because that was one thing that I will say I found weird about this even in the beginning. His, like, when this first unit came out, right? Or when the unit first came out, rather, excuse me. His hair, like, being in the shot kind of tripped me up a little bit, because it's so, like, out of frame for the original shot. It looks a little bit weird with it kind of, like, almost half spiked up for Super Saiyan 1. And then you can kind of see the moment that it spikes up, right? It goes from here to here, but you don't really notice it because the screen is shaking and everything's going crazy. But obviously it goes from this like Super Saiyan 1 spiked up to then Super Saiyan 2 here, right? And then we get this shot here, which, by the way, oh, the lighting is so fantastic on this, on the Dokkan one. It looks so good. And it's interesting too, because with obviously the original anime here, you can see that they actually have Gohan sort of spin around for the shot here. It's interesting that they didn't do that in the Dokkan one, right? They kind of do it a little bit, like where they have, right, the buildings sort of shift in the background a little bit with the PNG still staying there. I think if this animation was modernized, they probably would have had rotoscoping. I pray it wouldn't have ended up like the Fizz Kid Goku for the Path to Power movie, because they fumbled the spin shot on that one. But with a lot of the good rotoscoping that we've seen in Dokkan lately, I have a feeling that that shot would have looked absolutely fantastic spinning around like that with some true, you know, 3D-esque effects. I think that would have looked really good. So obviously we have this Gohan face here, which looks super good. A little bit of the hair movement there is so nice. Love the key effects too. Very, very nice close-up of Gohan. And obviously then we do get to the power-up section. Very nice electricity effects as well. Oh, this shot, bro! Woo! Woo! They were cooking in the studio when they made this one, bro. Oh, man. Such a good shot. I love the way that the hair is spiked up. I love the flow of the hair, too. The colors here, perfect. Everything, I would say, is absolutely fantastic. This looks good, too, with Gohan powering up, right? The electricity shooting up from the ground, the beams as well. All of it looks absolutely fantastic, if I do say so myself. Now, we get to the 12 key, which has some of my favorite of this unit's animations and some of my least favorite. I love this shot. of Gohan walking forward. I think it's great, right? However, what always tripped me up, right? Because everything here is good. The ki, the electricity, right? The smoke. Gohan's expression changing here isn't too bad. But when he then goes to the screaming face, right? I know it's coming. Show it to me. Come on. Show me the screaming head. Yep, we have the impact frame. First of all, I gotta say, that impact frame, fantastic. Dokkan always kills it with the impact frames. A good way to transition between the facial expressions. However, I will say, the final expression that Gohan has here feels... Oh, hey. Thank you. The final expression that Gohan has here is really awkward on this body. Let me take a look at this with the original, because I've actually always been curious how this looks compared next to the original. Okay, so this makes a little bit more sense too. I think it wouldn't feel as awkward if the body was in the same frame. Like, not the same frame as in, like, the exact same frame that takes place during this shot, but, like, the way that the shot... Oh, wow, they matched up the impact frames exactly to how they are in the movie, too. That's really cool. I'm trying to get a good side-by-side with Gohan's face. There we go. Perfect. So, like, how the shot is framed, right? It's only from his chest up. And even though, if this was the full body for the anime, it would probably look like this. Right? Like, this is a pretty good representation of how this would look, right? If it was like this. But because you don't see the full body, this doesn't feel as awkward with him walking forward. And because you do see it, I always felt that this shot with this head on here just looked kind of awkward at well. It doesn't help that this asset feels like it's meant to be here, right? Even maybe the gritting teeth face, or I'm sorry, I'm talking about the beginning one here. Like, this feels like it's meant to be here. Even this face, right? But then once we get to this head, it kind of feels like to me that they just took the screaming head asset and slapped it onto this body, and it wasn't really made for this body. I mean, that is basically how it is in this original scene, right? Gohan's body really doesn't change much here. But still, this shot always kind of felt a little bit awkward to me, for sure. It is also interesting that they reuse this from the active skill. There isn't really too many examples that I can think of where Dokkan animations reuse animations directly from themselves. Obviously, sometimes there's some shenanigans like that with SSR and TUR supers, but with, like, the animations themselves, right? This is literally just the same asset from the active skill, right? It's literally the same one. So it's kind of interesting because obviously this is just from when he initially transforms. It's kind of interesting to me that they reuse it. I guess maybe he sports this look when he's looking at Bojack and it's just a very similar shot, right? Or maybe this is actually the same animation. I'm actually not too sure. It does look a little bit different because I think the shading is different. Maybe what they figured here, right, is that, yeah, because the eye shape is a little bit different. Like, it's a little bit more sharpened there. And here, it's a little bit more round and small. Obviously, Jihad kind of compresses the video a little bit to fit in the frame. But you can tell that it's a different shot in the original anime. But they definitely use the same asset again, right? I guess what they figured is they were just thinking that the faces are similar enough that they are like, why bother making another asset? Ironically enough, the one in the 18 key rather, excuse me, actually looks a lot lower quality than this one. Like, you can see this one looks pretty high quality, and then when we click over here, the pixels are apparent. So maybe it is technically a separate asset, but it's clear they just use the same face, right? I'm not really, like, frustrated with it because, again, it's basically just what the source material is. I mean, it's 2 close-up shots of Gohan, so I get it. But it is just a little bit strange that they didn't bother to make it a little bit more accurate. I don't know. It's fine, right? Like, I don't really think that it's that big of a deal, to be honest with you. But it's just something interesting to point out, I think, for sure. Okay, so going back to it here, obviously we have this shot where, by the way, I will say, I wish this was the higher quality version because the lighting on this section is crazy. The lights, as they sort of flicker around Gohan, like reflecting off of his skin and his hair, so good, dude. Okay, so we have the enemy standing there, and we have this nice little effect here, right, with the air sort of flying towards the enemy. We have a very cool shot here of Gohan's fist coming into frame after the screen sort of goes dark. And as you can see, this very nice red impact frame here, where Gohan then appears on the screen in this really cool coloring, which again, very, very accurate to the movie, which is awesome to see, right? Like, look at the accuracy in terms of the color here. So awesome that they were able to get this so close. It is a little bit unfortunate because obviously with this shot, right, Dokkan stinky sprites, right? You obviously can't have Bojack attacking Gohan like this, so it's kind of a shame that this isn't there. But of course, this is supposed to represent the fruit punch exploding out of Bojack's back there. Obviously, they don't do anything that gory, right? They wanted to still represent this scene well, while also, you know, having Gohan literally pierce through Bojack. So I understand why they didn't do it this way. And especially considering, you know, like, it is a game that's technically, I think it's technically like T13 or maybe E10 plus Dokkan is, but I understand why they wouldn't want to go this gory because typically they don't. And they still include excuse me, I'm losing my words here, fruit punch on characters, but that's just kind of like aesthetic marks and like battle damage and stuff. They never really go like this hard on it, right? But nonetheless, still very, very cool. I will say it is a little bit unfortunate that we don't get this awesome shot right here where Gohan, you know, literally has his fist through Bojack, because obviously, you know, either their options here were to animate it like this where Bojack just flies away, and they do still have the red background, which is pretty cool. Love the key being blue, by the way. That's so cool. It's just the color choice here. Or they animate this like in Gotenks and have the ghost sprite 2 inches from the screen, and it looks like garbage. And I guess if they did that, they probably would have had to use Bojack's like KO screen asset and have it just be like inside of Gohan, right? Or right next to him or something like that. Also, I don't know if by this time they had it where you could have like assets kind of layered into each other. I don't remember when that was exactly enacted in Dokkan. But in a lot of modern animations where they have stuff like this, you can see like a character's fist going through another character, and it can be layered like this, right? But I have a feeling back then they maybe didn't have as good of a grasp on that. So you couldn't have had Gohan under Bojack's arm like this, right? He would have had to be either over him, or, you know, Bojack would have just completely covered up Gohan. So I understand why they did this shot like this. It would be really cool if this unit got a revamp, obviously, to get some more updated animations. His animations definitely aren't like a unit that I think needs them the most. There are certainly some scenes and moments that I think absolutely need them more, but it would still be cool to see him get that, absolutely. So then we have the quick cut to Gohan standing there, which looks really good. My man getting stanced up, excuse me. I always thought that this looked pretty good, even though obviously looking at it in the slow motion here, it looks a little bit choppy. I think the movement here, at least besides the like pose jumps here, looks really good. Like Gohan actually squatting down here, right? Besides this to this, looks really nice with him actually sort of shifting his body weight, and you can see that as well with the background actually moving in tandem with his movement. I think that looks fantastic, if I do say so myself. I think they really nailed that for sure. I want to see how that looks too right here. Yeah, it is definitely a little bit more fluid on the actual movie, right? You can tell. But nonetheless, it still looks really good. And of course, moving to the actual Kamehameha with the impact frame. Oh man, look at that, bro. They nailed the colors of this 100%, right? Like, they got it pinpoint accurate with how great they did the colors for this one, for sure. I think they did a great job of this. Obviously, the Kamehameha flying forward. It is a little bit unfortunate that it is just this to this, but they do a good job of masking this sort of pose change with this quick little frame here of white. And I think this looks pretty good. The shading on this is crazy and obviously looks really good for Gohan firing the Kamehameha forward, which this also looks pretty nice too. And then, ooh, we get into the big kahuna scene. First of all, can we take a minute to appreciate probably the most underappreciated part of this whole animation? Look at the crazy lightning effects and the way that the smoke flies away and dissipates, and then the lighting here, all the rocks flying away, the actual perspective of the smoke sort of flying towards the camera. Definitely underappreciated. I think, unfortunately, because it's sort of like the in-between stuff and obviously there's no character on the screen, a lot of stuff like this, when it comes to Dokkan, these like very cool in-between shots, sort of gets thrown under the rug a little bit, unfortunately. Nonetheless, though, obviously here we then transition to the white with the Gohan coming in for the final hit. This is pretty cool here, even though this is, I don't even think that he sticks his fist out here. Maybe he does. It's kind of hard to tell. But they just do this little impact effect, right? And a little bit of a shockwave. Oh, no, he does, definitely. Okay, it's just the key that was sort of blinding me from seeing it. He absolutely does stick his arm out there because you can see it there right after. And then, of course, the card art cutting in. We then have the beautiful shot of Gohan obviously having landed on the ground with the rocks flying past him and the electricity going everywhere. The very cool as well. I would love that they did this. I remember I popped off the first time I saw this with these impact frames here. Looks so good, dude. And then, of course, the giant flash of white into the rocks and electricity, and obviously Bojack being there no more. Such a good KO screen, by the way. And this asset of Gohan is so good with the hair movement as well. And I gotta say, right, they absolutely nailed it. First of all, by the way, talking about those effects, they absolutely did a fantastic job. I want to see how Gohan is shaded, actually, when he launches it. Okay, literally, it's shaded the same. That is such a good attention to detail here. Let's go back. Yeah, literally the same. It's actually a little bit more detailed on the Dokkan one, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, literally these effects are just exactly how they are in the movie, right? Which is fantastic. It's so cool that they're able to emulate that so much to a T. And again, even this shot, right, with Gohan flying forward, it is definitely a little bit more detailed in the movie, right? Because it's kind of like them charging at each other. And then obviously Gohan moving through him. Obviously they can't really do that with the enemy sprite because there isn't really a sprite for it. But I think they still do a very good job of that. It is kind of a shame that we didn't get these effects here. That is definitely a little bit of a missed opportunity with just replacing with the little shockwaves instead. But nonetheless, obviously still looking really, really good. And even with those impact frames that I was telling you about, right? Even though this shot is a lot more close up, I still really like the Dokkan version. I think that is one thing that maybe if they did revamp this, I would like to see them get a little bit more close up and personal with this. Though the problem then may just be that the sprite will look terrible. But nonetheless, even the impact frames, bro, it's just exactly how it is in the anime. Man, I really like this guy. I have always liked this card. I've always thought that this guy's animations have been really cool again. Even though there are some things with this guy that could absolutely be improved. And even when he came out, there were a couple of things that I was like, ooh, like especially with that face in the 18 key, right, when he's walking forward. Definitely a little bit wonky. But overall, I think this guy's animations are really, really good. I think he will still stand up the test of time for quite a bit while longer, especially that active skill 100% and the end part of the 18 key. Like that part is just so peak. It's so good. Of course, let me know what you think of this unit in the comments section below. I will definitely be curious what you guys have to say about this guy's animations. An absolutely certified Dokkan Christmas classic, if I do say so myself. Thank you guys so much for watching. Can't wait for the boy Gohan Beast. Merry Christmas, everybody. And I will see you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.